Yeah.
that you mentioned that because I decided, you know what, I'm gonna check out some of the older cartoon shows and like check out the usual, like check out the Incredible Hulk, the 2008 with Edward Norton, and see if it still holds up. And in my opinion, it still does. Like I think a lot of people give it some flack, but at the same time, to be completely honest, I've never heard why. It's always just like, oh, I hate Incredible Hulk. Why? I just don't like it. It's okay, fuck you, dude. Like
I think,
real quick, there was a
yeah,
TikTok that I came across,
yeah,
and I was talking to Chaos Sharky and Apollo Successor about this.
yeah.
Literally, they had their top 5 worst, and I forgot what the 5th was, but the 4th was the Incredible Hulk. But they go number 4, the Incredible Hulk. Let's move on. And it's like, no, fuck you, dude. Like, you know that
Explain yourself.
you have nothing on that fucking movie. You are shitting on it for no reason. You are following the crowd. You're a goddamn sheep, and I'm fucking tired of it.
I haven't seen the movie since I think it came out. I think I watched it once. It was like a one and done for me. I haven't watched it since, but I actually own it on Blu-ray. So back in the day, like 2008, 2009, whenever that got released digitally and physically, I was still in a kind of mode of like, going to like one of the shops and getting like 3 Blu-rays for 25 or whatever, and I was just like trying to collect as much as I could. And I remember seeing it and I had a cool box and I was like, yeah, I'll pick that up, fuck it. Like, and I had Iron Man already, so I was thinking, maybe I'll get them all or whatever, not
Yeah,
knowing how many of them would come out. You know what I mean? We were in the unknown at the time. But yeah, like, look, I've seen the movie once. I do actually want to go back and rewatch it because I have a lot of time for Edward Norton, and I think Hulk wise, he looked amazing. And like, if I remember correctly, like the action was like very intense in it. Like, he's picking up fucking like jeeps and shit and using them as weapons and all. Like, it sounds like exactly what a Hulk fan wants. And to be honest, yeah, like I think at the time it kind of it wasn't as good as Iron Man, maybe, and that's maybe why people started shitting on it at the start. And then Edward Norton fell out, and people kind of were calling him a dickhead and all this shit, and saying that he was selfish and all this stuff. And I think people kind of maybe fell out with Edward Norton more than they fell out with Hulk and the movie. I think Edward Norton himself just put a bit of a rotten taste in people's mouths. And then there was the recast, so people are like, oh, this isn't even MCU. Like, I remember thinking that myself. Like, I was like, when I do MCU rewatches, I would just skip the Hulk because I didn't think of it as in the MCU, because it's like, it just feels like, because of the recast, I'm like, I kind of don't want to include it because it's not technically MCU, but I know it is technically. So I think that's kind of maybe why.
Wait, you're talking about the Incredible Hulk 2008 is not MCU?
I was saying this, I didn't think of it as the time, and I think I think a lot of people have the same mindset. They don't think of it as MCU, even though technically it is. They don't think of it as MCU because of like the recast.
No, it's a fact that it is.
Oh, no,
Literally
I
at
know.
the end of the
I know it is for a fact, but
I get what
I
you're
don't think of it
saying.
as. Yeah, it's
but
kind of
how? Like, you literally,
upon.
we're gonna argue about this. How? Because literally at the end of the movie, you get the post credits or like mid credits where you literally have Ross talking with Stark, saying that that he wants to assemble a team. What happened in the previous movie with Iron Man? Fury wants to start up a team. So clearly they're trying to start up a team.
Yeah.
So clearly it's known.
Oh,
it's a thing. It's canon. Like,
when they
trying
made
to refute
the movie,
it is
when they made that movie, it was 100% in the MCU. 100% sure. Fucking Robert Downey Jr. shows up at the end of the movie to recruit him. Of course, it's MCU. But I just think, with everything that happened in the real world and the recast and everything like that, I just think it's one of those movies that's kind of side shelved a bit. Like, yes, technically it is the MCU, but it's not in my MCU.
No, you can't.
And
if
you're reading the chat right now,
oh, it's not.
People,
sure.
it's not saying it's not MCU. It's not considered MCU.
Dude, listen. The entire way that the way that it ends literally is based upon being always angry. Him actually acquiring the ability to change into the Hulk at will, which is done in the Avengers. He can change himself at will to Hulk. It is still canon. It is still part of the timeline. Stop trying to refute it just because you think you hate it. Like no, like unless I get a solid reasoning. And
So
I'm not saying you have to be like you have to be completely concrete and everything has to be factual. I just need an actual reason. When you watch a movie, like when I can talk about like Iron Man 1, honestly, I can't remember shit. I remember the cave. I remember Tony Stark build it in the cave with a bunch of scraps. I remember the Ironmonger. I remember Obadiah Stane a little bit, but I don't remember shit because I didn't watch it that often. Iron Man was
yeah,
great, but it wasn't that great. I think too many people put their faith into Iron Man and was like, "Oh my god, this is so fantastic." But can you really tell me what went on? If you really truly enjoyed it, if you felt
I,
like that was the top, like can you really specify what you loved about that scene?
I wouldn't call Iron Man 1 the top, but like it was a good Kickstarter for the cinematic universe. And just being like, I remember sitting in the theater watching that in 2008 and being absolutely blown away by Robert Downey Jr. and just how good he was as Iron Man and as Tony Stark. I think that is what probably blew people away the most, was just at how good the casting was and how good it actually just like sank in and just worked. You know what I mean? And like I even loved Terrence Howard as War Machine. I was kind of upset when Don Cheadle first came out because I was like, I actually really liked Terrence Howard, and that was a bit of a kind of mix up as well. And I think again, talking about a recast towards the start of the MCU, a lot of people don't like Iron Man 2 for whatever reasons as well. And I think again, some of those reasons might be the recast because it just didn't make any sense in a cinematic universe that there's a new actor playing a character. And I understand it's all real world politics getting in the way, but um I don't know. I think Iron Man 2, just like what you're saying about the Hulk, I think gets a shit rap. Because I think it's quite a good movie. It's not bad. It's not good. It's like sorry, it's not great. It's a good movie. And I'll tell you what I'm gonna do. I usually have Wednesdays off and I might sit and watch a movie with the missus or whatever, and I try and get an early night. I'm gonna dedicate this Wednesday to rewatching The Incredible Hulk. I'm gonna watch
Okay.
it for the what might be the second time. I'm trying to really think. I know I saw it on the big screen. I maybe watched it once at home. I genuinely don't remember. I only have memory of watching it the very first time. And to be honest, with where the MCU is going right now, I actually think a rewatch of that movie is probably important because we know Betty Brant's come back into it. Or sorry, what is it? What's
Yeah,
her surname?
Betty Brant, I think is Spider Man.
Sorry, yeah, Betty, whatever her name is. Betty Ross.
Betty Ross.
Yeah, yeah, of course it's
Like
Ross.
Betty
Uh,
Brant. What?
Yeah, sorry, I thinking of the wrong person. But Betty is coming back. We know that Liv Tyler is returning. Obviously, we have Thunderbolt Ross becoming the Red Hulk and everything like that. Like, and this is one of his first appearances in the MCU as well. So again, I know it's a different actor, but we'll ignore that. But yeah,
Right.
I think a rewatch of that movie is probably important now for
Yeah.
what's to
Well,
come.
probably. But the idea behind this, though, is and from what everything that you're telling me, and from what I'm hearing from other people, is that it's not so much the movie that they care about; it's the people that were in it. And
I think so.
I think that's horrible. I think
I
that's a
do.
horrible
I
thing to
I do too.
talk about because like
I do too.
I watched the movie for the movie. I watched the movie for the characters, and I'm sure you do too. And I'm sure there's some things that you loved about these different actors and actresses that came through. And yeah, I can see how it can smudge the design of like the movies and how it can like cause trouble in the long run. But like if it really if it really mattered, then why is it that people were shouting to recast T'Challa when they did Chadwick Boseman? Because Chadwick Boseman passed away and people were crying out for a recast because Chadwick Boseman did so well to portray the Black Panther that like
Mhm.
even Disney was like, well, we can't change that. People get pissed off when it comes to recasting. So
Mhm.
because of all the shit that went on, I believe that we're to blame for the non-recasting of T'Challa because they've been recasting left and right, whenever they have to. And now that people have been upset and on a constant basis, they can't. I call
It's
bullshit.
I don't know, man. I think for Chadwick, I think it was so sudden. It was such a shock, and the fact that he was young and it was cancer. I think it's just I think out of respect, which we've heard since the decision was made, we've heard from his own family that that's not what he would have wanted. He would have
Right.
wanted the recast because it's all about the character. So Chad himself is probably looking down on us going, oh, just recast, guys. Come on, please, just continue the story. But I can understand the business decision in it, because I think some people would be upset at a recast too early, but then most people I think are just like, we want the character more so than the actual actor.
Well, now they want the character more because they've seen how much of a bullshit situation it is when you don't recast properly.
Yeah, yeah, I agree.
And and,
I
and
agree.
and look how weak it was with Yuri or Shuri. It
Mm,
was so fucking weak, dude.
it was.
It was such a letdown. The story didn't make sense because they had to try to work around the fact that he was gone. It was
Mm,
so sudden. He's gone. Like, how could this have happened? There was a disease, and it's like, yeah, that's fine and all. And I get what you're trying to portray this as like, this is so tragic. I really wish that we could have him back, and that's perfectly fine. Like, I get that, but not recasting him is an even bigger middle finger in my opinion, because
yeah,
you're essentially saying that the character dies with him, and
yeah,
that's the worst thing you could do.
I
And the
think so.
character did die. The character died with him. And yes, we have the child, but how
I kind of
when
I kind of like the idea of the child coming in because I know they had mentioned something about not recasting for like 8 years. And I think by the time they come around to using T'Challa again, it will be 8 years, and they're going to use his son, who's also named T'Challa. So it's kind of like the return of T'Challa, but it's not the same T'Challa, like T'Challa the second. It's kind of like best of a bad situation, sort of, without doing a full recast. But I don't know. At this point, like they may as well wait for the soft reboot and then just recast T'Challa altogether and start again. You know what I mean? Like I think they should like a soft reboot in that sense would actually really work for the character of T'Challa because they've gone and just erased him from the timeline, which I think again, real world stuff made that decision for them. Um, but I think it wasn't the best decision for the MCU itself.
right, and consistently showing that they just don't know what decisions to make because there's too many people outcrying and being upset and showing that like we can't like you can't change things, you can't change things, and then they finally don't change something and they're like, well, you need to change things, you need to change things. Like
Yeah.
it's such a hard situation. Either go in full force and do recasts every time something happens, or don't.
Yeah.
If they were to be consistent and they were like, we're going to recast T'Challa, we're going to make sure that there's a new Black Panther. We want to keep the storyline consistent. We want to make sure that T'Challa gets his just story, because that was one of the strongest Black characters that you could ever get in any sort of Marvel storyline so far. Like that, we had Blade in the past, and Blade was fucking badass. You know, we
Lovely.
had Luke Cage, and I thought Luke Cage was really fun. Like and but like when Black Panther came out, it was just so fucking iconic.
It was. I remember standing in the line to go see the movie, and like, this might sound weird for me to say, but there were so many black people around. Like, I live in like
You're not
in
trying to say it
Ireland.
in a mean way.
I'm not saying that it just might sound out of context if somebody was to tune in right now and hear me say this, but I remember seeing so many more black people than I would usually see in like a line for the cinema, right? And I remember thinking to myself, wow, this is actually like a cultural thing that's happening right now. Like it's this is like, I saw all these like little like 10-year-old black kids coming out of the movie and they were all like jumping around so happy and everything like that. And I just couldn't, like, I was like, that's actually so like heartwarming. It's so amazing to see that all these new Marvel fans have their own hero who looks like them to look up to.
Yeah.
Again, I've never had to think about it because most superheroes are white skinned or whatever. And again, I like characters that aren't white skinned, but I never really needed or looked for representation in that way because I suppose we were kind of drowned out in it. So it's not something that we think about. But yeah, like it felt like it was something special for all these people who had somebody new on the scene in the spotlight and they look like them. You know what I mean? It definitely felt different, and that was
Well,
amazing to see. And
and
then
then
it
when
was
you
obviously so tragic what happened. Like it was just like I
right.
genuinely thought to myself, oh, all those poor kids, man. Like I thought about it, like I was like all those kids that I actually physically saw with my own eyes jumping around so happy pretending to be Black Panther coming out of the screen. I was just like, fuck, those kids are probably all absolutely heartbroken right now.
Yeah, man. But the thing is too is that like having the oh God, what was I going to go with this one? I think I lost you like halfway through because I had the thought, and then as you kept going, it rolled out of my head.
Sorry.
But it's essentially, um, okay, yeah. So thinking about it now, so when you see that there's so much agency for this character, especially like when you go back to the Hulk situation, if they had not recast Hulk, they wouldn't have had Hulk in the Avengers, right? How
Yeah.
pissed off do you think people would have been if there was no Hulk in the Avengers?
I don't really know. Like again, I'm not the biggest Hulk fan. I personally probably wouldn't
Right,
have
right,
given a
right,
shit, you
right,
know.
right. No,
So
no, 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 no. Like, we're not talking about you.
yeah,
We're talking about in general. How fucked up would it be if one of the core members of an elite group were not there for the movie?
and I don't know. Like I think if you take the Hulk out of what we got, I still think it's amazing. But you know, I'm a big DC fan, and I've like watching like the Justice League
You
movies, for example, and like there's no Green Lantern there, there's no Green Arrow. Like I'm always missing heroes that I want to see in teams like the Justice League and stuff. So I kind of
wait,
understand.
wait, wait. When have you not seen the Green Lantern in the JLA? I've always seen him in the JLA.
Not in like the movies that we got in the DCEU. There was no Green
Yeah,
Lantern at all.
but those are movies. They had already swept away from it because they knew the movie was horrible.
I know, but it's a cinematic universe, and they're creating the team. And I think fucking Lantern was like number 6. He's like the 6th JL member, so it's like he's quite fucking important if you read the comics and you know the
Holy, yeah.
team. Like he's one of the founders, so it was always kind of annoying for me that he was never around for that. And then you get to like
Right.
Zack Snyder's
Wait,
Justice League, and it's
wait.
he's trying to bring in John Stewart and stuff. So
Pinto, did you just hear yourself right now? It upset you that he wasn't there.
yeah, but again,
Yeah.
as I say, I don't have that experience with the Avengers because
Right, right, right.
I wasn't an Avengers fan as a kid.
But you just stated for something that you actually care about.
Yeah,
Your character was not the character that you wanted to see there because he was considered a founding character, just like the Hulk is in the Marvel universe.
yeah,
Like it's the exact same feeling. That's what I want to hear. That's the exact
yeah,
same
yeah,
feeling that I want you to understand is
yeah,
that if they had never recasted Hulk and they never went through with it, and they did an Avengers without Hulk, which, to be completely honest, they use him all the fucking time, like in shows, in movies, like and stuff like that. Like I'm not trying to say like, oh, you can never go without Hulk. I'm saying that not having a Hulk in your universe is just like that feeling when you didn't have Green Lantern with the JLA in the movie,
yeah,
but you were aware, you accepted the fact that like it's because the previous movie was shit. Now, I don't recall hearing that the Hulk movie was shit until they recasted Mark Ruffalo and until they heard about all the shit that went down with Edward Norton and the whole like struggling like creative differences, struggling to find a way to update the script. He's always trying to update it himself because he feels like things need to be changed. Norton has already explicitly stated that he's an avid reader of Hulk. Like he basically read up on him, and he was trying to act like Henry Cavill.
hmm
And so because Edward Norton doesn't have the same charisma as Henry Cavill, it didn't end up the same way. But we see that same situation with Henry Cavill. It just must have been that he had a better way of speaking his mind. But people were still against it because they didn't want to listen to the person that actually was trying to portray the character.
yeah. But wasn't it that he wanted to direct, and they were like,
Oh, dude!
we cannot let you
So
direct your own
lis-
movie.
listen, listen. I know that's what you want to reach towards, and I am aware of that. I
Mm.
didn't say he was wonderful. I said he was an asshole.
Yeah.
So like
I
it,
was team
it's
look man, I was team Norton, even up to the fact when they actually cast Ruffalo. I didn't like it. I was like, fuck, I want Edward Norton. I was team Norton
right,
all the way. And then
right.
after I kind of got used to Ruffalo, I was like, yeah, that's fine. We can stay with Ruffalo. I don't really care. But yeah, look, I don't know. Like I presume all the
I,
hardcore fucking Hulk fans are probably yeah, pretty passionate
Peop-
about this like you are, but
no,
to me,
like
it's not even on my radar, bro.
the hardcore Norton fans are because of the fact that Hulk was Disneyfied. And the last time we saw a decent Hulk was the Incredible Hulk.
Yeah,
And nobody wants to admit that because they don't want to say that Hulk was actually decent. I'm not saying it was great. It was good for me, decent for others, but nobody wants to admit it.
yeah. I don't like. I'm curious to go back and watch it now, especially after the kind of dip in the MCU. I think watching it now, you'll probably be like, actually, this is like so much better than so much movies that we've and TV shows that we've gotten out in the last 2-3 years. Anyway, you know what I mean? Like it's going to be way better than a lot of Phase 4, most of Phase 5. So yeah, I'm excited to watch it.
Yeah, but it's like I'm telling you right now though, it's not the best. I'm like I
No,
can admit that it's not. It really
no,
isn't. But it was still good for what it
mm,
was. And
yeah,
that's all I'm saying. I'm not trying to tell people like, "Oh, it's the greatest thing ever. Oh, you got to love it." I'm just saying like, please like stop trying to make it sound like it was the worst thing ever. We've had worse.
yeah. Oh, of course, Jesus. There's movies that I would like outright refuse to watch. I would never like refuse to sit down and watch that movie. Like, yeah, I wouldn't be against it, but there is movies that I'd be like, yeah, I'm not watching that again. I'm sorry.
Yeah, of course.